Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hel Talk. It's just going to be me for right now because I hope to record another episode with a group of guys tomorrow. So today will be, I don't know, we'll call it a prelude to the topics that we discuss tomorrow as well. That way, I don't end up talking over everybody for the entire time. So hopefully I can get my opinions out there. Maybe they'll be able to listen to them by the time we talk tomorrow, and we'll just, I don't know, maybe that'll be better. Who knows? You'll get less of me and more of everybody else. But one of the main overarching topics I wanted to kind of bring to just people's attention in general, and I think a lot of people that are, I guess, playing this game seriously are really starting to feel, is the strength of Alpha Strike, meaning a player going first. For all intents and purposes, they're using that first turn immunity to their advantage. And on turn two, the first player is able to go all the way across the map and just kind of really hit and KO and score whatever points are available to them. When HeroClix maps shrunk from 24 by 16 to 16 by 16, we were told by WizKids. I'm just going to say WizKids in general. I can't remember if it was the WizKids game design team or balance team. I don't know, whatever teams they have. But we were told that Alpha Strike was a serious topic, a serious point that they really considered when shrinking down the maps. And one of the things that they promised to us, at least for a short while it seems, was that range values on average would decrease, as well as speed values would decrease. We're starting to see many teams now. I feel like we're going to start seeing them. This is just my prediction, but Red, White, and Clicks is just around the corner. The Champion Clicks Open Fall Festival events are a few weeks after that, in the weeks following. So we'll see what comes up, but I feel like we're going to start seeing a lot of teams that are kind of forced to play the ultra aggro Alpha Strike because there are no defensive teams that can do anything. Because typically defensive teams would be a barrier team, and you're like, well, you can't play barrier because they just run through everything. There are no game effects now which remove improved movement, such as the nifty traffic barrel that was extremely popular in the past. With that rotating out of Modern, there's nothing that players can do to prevent an Alpha Strike like that. You just kind of have to get hit and hope that you're not giving Rogue any good targets to hit. Again, and there are teams that can effectively deal with this, but do we just kind of is the game from like a Rogue Prime, Cable Prime standpoint? Like if that's kind of the rock, if we're doing, it feels like rock paper scissors. If Rogue and Cable Prime is there, in that ultra aggro Alpha Strike that can't be prevented because it runs through all the terrain, there's that team. Then there's the team that tries to just hard prevent that with things like Beetlejuice. And then there's other teams that are like tentpole, like Infinite and similar stuff. And I feel like those are kind of The three teams that stand out to me at the moment. We'll see. Again, we'll see what happens. I'm more than happy to be wrong. In fact, I think in one of the previous episodes, what did I say? I said there was a piece that I said would win Worlds, and it didn't. I think I said like Animal Man is definitely going to be on the Worlds winning team. And I don't think it was. I think it was just like Prime Colossus and stuff. So I was wrong there. So again, more than happy to be wrong. But I'm worried about the state of Alpha Strike and the state of even defensive teams, because Barrier as it stands right now isn't a very useful power when all of your Alpha Strikes run through blocking. When you have Juggernaut, when you have Rogue, I mean, when you literally have anybody with the Crimson Gem that has hypersonic, when you have anybody that runs through blocking and also has Animal Man so that they can get hypersonic speed from that, it's worrisome that from a turn 2 perspective, it doesn't feel good knowing that you can't set up in such a way that your opponent kind of can hit whoever they want. There are specific situations where you can definitely do that. You can make a team that is pure, mastermind, and so Rogue will, never be able to hit who she specifically wants to. You can make, but again, it's kind of like, will do those work against the rest of the field? It doesn't. Mastermind teams generally don't do well against things like Infinite, who just deal damage by not even rolling dice. Things of that nature. So it's tricky. We'll see what happens, but I'm worried about it, and I'm worried about it more. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted just to make this quick solo recording, is because the future of HeroClix, from what we see, is falling more onto that side of the fence of offensive, unpreventable Alpha Strike. What do I mean? So I mean specifically, and I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying that this piece is even good enough to be used, but I'm just bringing it up because of what the effect is and what it does. What does it mean for the game of HeroClix? And I'm talking about the Doom. Is it called Doom Supreme or Doom Sorcerer Supreme? Dr. Doom Supreme. There we go. Dr. Doom Supreme is a chase figure that's going to be coming out in the Strange Tales set, which has already released. No, I mean, well, in some locations, if you're lucky enough to have a distributor which can't read boxes, they may have already shipped it to you, but it's supposed to come out in sometime in December. We'll see. We know they have it. For some reason, WizKids has this set before most places can get their X-Men 97. What? But we're not here to shit on WizKids. We do that all the time. We don't need to keep doing that for right now, at least. But let's get back. Dr. Doom Supreme, on either of his starting lines, which is 100 or 75 points, which is a significant portion of your team regardless. But we've seen pieces of that point level be used when they have incredibly powerful global effects. And Dr. Doom Supreme is right in that boat. He's no different. He has an extraordinarily powerful global effect that affects only opposing characters. So he has a damage power, special damage power, that has a passive which says opposing effects can't generate terrain markers. So again, from a purely game balance standpoint, even if you were throwing out everything about characters that run through blocking or have improved target destroy blocking or just improved target blocking. If you even get rid of all of that, right? And you were saying, okay, let's imagine a world where no character can run through or target through blocking terrain. Barrier becomes incredibly strong, right? That's a game state where barrier would be its strongest, where you couldn't move through or shoot through blocking terrain. Let's even go to a game state that says super strength can no longer pick up blocking terrain. You know, remember back in the day when you couldn't pick up barrier? Man, remember that? Let's imagine a game where the rules are that. Just, again, so it's what I'm trying to basically get at is let's imagine a game state where you virtually can't interact with barrier or any blocking terrain. It's just kind of permanently there. Imagine that destroy actions are gone. You know, things like that. It's just if you put barrier there, it will be there for until you're beginning your next turn. Barrier would be an overpowered ability, right? 100%, because you could make it so you cannot interact with the opposing team, or the opposing team couldn't interact with you after you did stuff to them. So barrier is broken in that game state. But this Doctor Doom, even with barrier being that strong, just by playing him, he would be an auto include, right? You'd say, okay, I have to play him in order to interact with your team. But now bringing everything back to reality, barrier is not that great because of all the reasons that I told you to ignore before. And even still, it's still worth to consider playing this Doctor Doom Supreme, because what does it allow that Alpha Strike team to do? What does it allow you to do? It allows you to choose characters that wouldn't normally have super strength, that wouldn't normally run through blocking or target through blocking, and it allows you to use them for an Alpha Strike, so long as they have the movement and the range and all that stuff, right? Because since your opponent can't generate any terrain markers, the only terrain markers that they could actually place that would be reasonably effective would be their own that they place during game setup, which you could prevent by placing your own, for example, your own elevated terrain. So if you put your own elevated terrain in squares near your opponent, they couldn't place their own terrain there before it would be next to a transition square, so they couldn't do that. Plenty of things that you could do to get around it. So now there's virtually nothing unless we see another game element that can do it. There's virtually nothing your opponent can do to prevent that Alpha Strike team from hitting whoever they want. So if a Doctor Doom Supreme team goes first, granted they're paying 75 points for a character that doesn't really do much other than that, but is that all you need in a way? If you know your opponent can't barrier, you could play things like Zala and say, hey, you have barrier, so all I have to do is hit something, and then I'll bring over Prime Cable because I'm playing the Phoenix bystander, so everybody shares a keyword, and then I'm tagging in with Mr. Sinister, and in done deal. I don't, again, this might not be a good team. You might be better off playing an inexpensive character that just has the Crimson Gem, equipped to them. But it is scary to me to think that WizKids is okay with going the route and making characters that have such insanely strong global offensive effects. That to me is pretty wild. I don't know what I said. I don't know what else is in this set. I don't know what else is going to be in even future sets to hopefully balance this out. But I think there definitely needs to be more defensive game elements that can't be easily flipped into an additional offensive game element. What do I mean by that? A very, very strong defensive game element is the one-shot card that's coming out in the Sentinel OP storyline or whatever. I don't know, the Sentinel Strike stuff. It's called Halt Mutant, and you just you pick somebody, and it just says that opposing characters within, I think it's like within 4 squares. Let me see. Let me pull it up on HC Units, see if it is there. I'm gonna type Halt, HALT. Yep. So at the beginning of the turn, you may choose a friendly character. If you do, until your next turn, opposing characters that can use special powers can't be moved or placed into any squares within 4 squares of the chosen character. That is an insanely strong defensive one shot. It could effectively make your team immune for a turn. Right? So think about the Alpha Strikes that I just brought up. Rogue Prime effectively could not attack really any of your friendly characters. There's she could pick up a terrain marker which gives her 3 or 4 giant reach, and then perhaps be able to attack with that. But again, she would not be able to move within 4 squares of the chosen character, and if you just group your team up, that would prevent anybody really from getting hit. It does a very, very similar thing to Prime Cable with the right positioning. Prime Cable wouldn't be able to attack anybody unless he had to I think I said modify his range value because he only has 4 range. And then again, there's ways of preventing your opponent from doing that, such as Sinestro Prime or Beetlejuice. Well, actually, not necessarily Beetlejuice because they could be playing someone with the shield team ability, but they're not. They're not on that team, at least for right now. But again, like I said, there's ways of doing it. So, but you get the point. It's a insanely strong defensive one shot. Unfortunately, it can be used, in my opinion, to an even stronger extent offensively. What do I mean? Let's say you're going first and you have Rogue Prime and you are going to Alpha Strike with Rogue Prime. Let's kind of assume optimal conditions here is that you're also playing the Legacy Black Panther, aka Chair Panther. You're playing Chair Panther so that you can prevent your opponent from using their Halt Mutant, right? So therefore, you're guaranteeing this Alpha Strike. So Rogue, let's say you send her across the map, you do whatever she's got to do. You end her movement after hypersonic speed. You end her movement in a square where she's not adjacent to any other character, but she's within 4 squares of most of your opponent's team. We'll just say ideally, most of your opponent's team She's adjacent to those opposing characters. Since you flipped Halt Mutant at the beginning of your turn, those opposing characters can't be moved or placed. Virtually, if imagine an opposing character is 3 squares away from the rogue that you chose, Halt Mutant at the beginning of your turn. They effectively can't do anything next turn, especially if they have 0 range. If they are another, piece like, a Juggernaut type piece or a Prime Abomination or something like that, there are just certain pieces that for 5 points you've effectively said, I'm going to come across the map, I'm going to hit you, and then on your following turn, you can't do anything. At least you can't do anything with characters that have special powers. So, congratulations. I hope you're playing some extraordinarily overpowered pieces that don't have special powers, which that might have to be the case. But if you're asking me, I think Halt Mutant is just going to be banned. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow. So you can use that in an extraordinarily and oppressively offensive way as well. By just sending one character across the map and having flipped Halt Mutant at the beginning of the turn, have locked down the majority, if not the entirety, of your opponent's team, such that they can't move or place anywhere, anywhere meaningful. They may not be able to even make attacks, any meaningful attacks that turn, which is wild to think of. I mean, imagine you not only getting a very strong alpha strike with one of the best pieces in the game, but then your opponent is followed up with, okay, I can't target Rogue unless it's an attack. I can't charge to hit Rogue because I have a special attack power or a special damage power or a special movement power or a special defense. I can't charge her. I can't hypersonic her. I can't. I want to use running shot, but because I'm prime cable. But I have a special. I have a special damage power, so therefore I can't use running shot. And there's a character in the way. Another one of my friendly characters in the way, so I can't shoot Rogue, and I don't want to pulse wave because that would pulse wave my entire team. It's like. So there's plenty of ways where you're like, you have a extraordinarily alpha strike followed by your opponent's turn, which should be their comeback turn. Turn 2 for your opponent should be like, all right, this is the turn where I took a hit, but I can swing back. And if they're not able to swing back with all of their main attackers, that is really worrisome. For the same reason, now it's whoever going first effectively gets 2 turns of alpha strike. That's not fair at all. You know what I mean? So this is why I think Halt Mutant's going to get banned overall. We will see what ends up happening. But I think Chair Panther's going to have to be on every team all the time. On top, because it's just, again, it's wild. You're obviously I think the best defensive thing that's really come out is that's also going to be in the Sentinel Strike thing is the Sentinel Head terrain marker, where if you're holding it, you can. I don't know if people remember the days of I think it was Tombstone. I think it was a Tombstone or Gravestone or something. I think it was Tombstone. Let me look that up on HC Units as well. I know Tombstone is a Spider-Man villain, but HC Units doesn't want to be fast. Oh, no, there we go. Let's see. There it is, the Tombstone object for Mutations and Monsters. It said the defense value of a character holding a Tombstone is modified +2, but after resolution of an unsuccessful. Yeah, so Tombstone was like, I have +2 defense, but if you miss an attack against me, then the Tombstone's removed from game. The head is similar in the sense that if you get hit, you can remove it, and then you don't take the damage. So that's a good defensive thing. But does it overcome all of this stuff that we're going over right now? I don't think so. Another instance of a one shot that is incredibly defensive, but it's probably going to be used better for the offensive is there's a spell one shot that's coming out also in Strange Tales called Images of Ikonn, Ikonn. It gives characters with it only works with the mystical keyword, but trust me, there's going to be good characters with that keyword. But it gives them an ability for free, which you roll a d6, and half of that result is the number of tokens they get, and then that number of tokens is, until their next turn, it's the number of attacks that they can just kind of quote unquote say no to. So every time that they're targeted with an attack, you have the option of removing a token and then saying, you know what, no, that character is not a target, which effectively, makes them immune until your next turn. Because you're only going to be saying no to the attacks that you're worried about. If somebody, unfortunately, your opponent can't play around it by saying, "Oh, I'm just going to, use this guy with like a low damage value and flurry, and I'm going to, waste a couple of attacks on this person so that they can't be targeted by that attack, and then." And then I'm going to follow up with my heavy hitter attack, and then they're going to have to eat that damage. Nope, they can just say, okay, I will take the 1 damage precision strike attack, and then when you follow up, with the 7 damage rogue, terrain marker attack, I'll say no, I'm not going to be targeted by that. So very, very defensive. But again, is that going to be used defensively on turn 2 more than used on turn 1 for the character that is being used to Alpha Strike? Again, let's go back to, I'm trying to find a mystical character example right now. It's like, I don't think anything stands out at the moment, but even with Alan Scott, that'd be pretty funny. Yeah, doesn't matter. The point is, I don't know. I just look at is Atrocitus and Dexter good enough? No. But yeah, it's kind of just, even if there doesn't exist a character that is incredibly overpowered that I'm not thinking about right now. I don't know. Spirit of Vengeance Red Hulk. There's a good example. So you're going to go and you're going to Alpha Strike with Spirit of Vengeance Red Hulk, and then you're going to basically make him untargetable until your next turn, which, I don't know, maybe that's not great. Maybe you actually just do want him to get hit instead. Collector's Trove Juggernaut. There you go. Okay, that's a great example. Great example of Juggernaut, because he goes right back into the first thing that we were talking about of characters that just run through everything. So Juggernaut runs through everything, and then then on the first turn he could flip Halt Mutant, which prevents virtually your entire opponent's team from retaliating against Juggernaut or even just moving at all. They can't even move again. They won't be able to move at all, which is huge. It is a broken effect. If you can virtually give almost every character on your opponent's team a mobile, that's wild. But they won't be able to do that. And then if you follow up with either on the, I don't think you would do it on the same turn, but maybe on another turn, you can use that Images one and then choose Juggernaut and say, okay, on average, you're going to get 2 tokens, or I don't know if they're called like illusion tokens or whatever. They are called illusion markers. So he'll get 2 illusion markers on average. And that again, we'll say, all right, cool. If you try to target Juggernaut with any attack that threatens him whatsoever, you're just going to say no. And you're like, okay, so then your opponent has to knowingly waste an action. You know, it's like attacking Juggernaut knowing that you have the option to say no means that, oh, okay, I'm going to attack you with this guy that does 3 damage. And he has like 10 attack. Juggernaut's like, all right, cool, go ahead, try. You know, you're not likely to hit, and I'm not likely to take any damage. Go ahead, try to hit me. When it comes up and tries to attack you with Prime Rogue, you're like, no, you're not going to target me. And then Rogue's like, okay, well, I moved, so I'm going to target you again. You're like, no, you're not going to. That the second attack, no, you're not hitting me. Yeah, so your opponent, knowing that, virtually then cannot target him with any attacks that are of reasonable strength. They have to point that cannon somewhere else. Is that fair to do after you've already used an Alpha Strike? I don't think so, but again, we will see. I really like the idea of defensive shots. I really like the idea of just defensive teams and shell teams. I like the idea of them existing in an environment where Alpha Strike is strong, because that's what makes it healthy. Because if defensive teams get too strong, then Alpha Strike is weak enough to the point where neither team wants to move at all to attack the other team, and then it's just stalemates every game. I get that. But I just wish the design team thought about how these defensive game elements that we're seeing so far, how they can unfortunately be flipped around and used in an offensive way. It's like it would be very easy. It'd be a lot easier to say, for example, like, I'm trying to on the fly think of a way to quote unquote correct these game elements, such as Halt Mutant. Right? Let's try to fix Halt Mutant right now. So Halt Mutant currently says, again, at the beginning of your turn, you may choose a friendly character. If you do, until your next turn, opposing characters that can use special powers can't be moved or placed into any squares within 4 squares of the chosen character. That's only 5 points, ladies and gentlemen. Ridiculous. This is better than Canon Event. By far. Better than Canon Event by a mile. Which is why I think it's going to be banned. And I wouldn't be surprised when it is. How do we fix this so that it's only a defensive one-shot, which is still wildly strong? Let me be clear. Even if this was only defensive, it would still be wildly strong. So number one, I think in order to fix this, the choice has to be made. I don't want to say has to be, but I'm just, again, this is on the fly here, folks. What if it was, instead of at the beginning of the turn, the choice was at the end of your turn, and you can only choose a friendly character in which opposing characters are not within 4 squares. So you can only pick a character, a friendly character, that is not within 4 squares of any opposing characters. That would mean that it can't be used offensively, because you wouldn't have, since you would choose at the end of your turn, you wouldn't have the opportunity to choose a character, then move and or place that friendly character with, right next to all the other opposing characters, effectively preventing them from moving or being placed. Right? So So that fixes that, and so the end of turn fixes that, and then it also fixes it by having the requirement that there are no opposing characters within 4 squares, meaning they can't approach you. That would be it. Like they and here's the thing. I get the flavor of this one shot just even by the name, Halt Mutant. It's supposed to be, for example, like a sentinel or something walks up to a mutant, sees them. Oh, the mutant is right next to me. Halt, mutant. Like, don't run away. So it's supposed to prevent your opponent from running away, right? I get that aspect, but I think that's too strong because it's not preventing your opponent from running away. It's preventing your opponent from targeting you or any of your friendly characters because they can't move or be placed. And if you're working with characters that don't have range, they're effectively screwed. And if you're working with characters that have range but don't have improved targeting, they're also effectively screwed because they can't. If you can't shoot through a wall or over elevation or through stealth, and you can't move, then you can't target anybody. You're just passing your turn, which is wildly strong. Especially when the quote unquote the counter to this is just, well, if you KO that character, then the duration's over, right? Or not the duration's over, but it's just there's the character's not on the map, so I can move where I want after that. Yeah. Go ahead and try to KO a Prime Rogue or Collector's Trove Juggernaut when none of your friendly characters that have special powers can move or be placed. And granted, there is definitely ways to place your initial setup such that, for example, let's say I'm playing a team that's using Prime Rogue and Juggernaut, right, from Collector's Trove. I'm using both of them because they're both great pieces, so why not? All right. If I keep both of those pieces together, then someone that uses Halt Mutant would be able to lock both of them down at the same time. So therefore, neither of them would be able to move, and neither of them would be able to make an attack. So that stinks. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to split them up. Halt Mutant still works for the character itself, and it locks down one of the characters. So you're like, okay, I can lock down Rogue or Juggernaut, whichever one that the remainder of my team is less afraid of. You know what I mean? So if there's like, oh, I'm afraid of that AoE Juggernaut damage, I'll lock him down. If I'm afraid of the Rogue single target damage, I'll lock her down. And then more importantly, Rogue and Juggernaut will still not be able to attack the character with Halt Mutant because they can't move in. They can't charge, and I understand Rogue has range, but again, we're assuming that the player is smart enough to position their Halt Mutant character in such a way where Rogue does not have line of fire to them. So we're just assuming that. Yeah, but again, if that was at the end of your turn, and if you couldn't be within 4 squares of opposing characters, that would be pure defensive, which I think would be fine. It's still very strong. Very, very, very strong. Because effectively, what it kind of says is, until your next turn, you cannot be targeted with standard close attacks. It basically says that. Because virtually every character that is being used now that is close attack focused and is used as an Alpha Strike character, virtually all of them have special powers. So it's still extremely strong. But I think at that point, it's probably the balance is probably just within the number of squares. You might be able to get away with things like, because let's be honest, 4 squares is a lot. So if it was at the end of your turn, and then you choose a friendly character, you could still even say opposing characters can't be within 4 squares, but then follow it up with opposing characters that can use special powers can't be moved or placed into any squares within what? 1 square, 2 squares of the chosen character. I don't know. I feel like that's also probably necessary. Especially when we're going back, this is 5 points. It can't be any cheaper. I mean, I suppose it could be free, but they don't make. I don't think they have made a free one shot yet. But yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So I hope that WizKids does make more defensive focused game elements and perhaps even game mechanics in the future. I hope they're really watching that. Currently, we have enough extraordinarily powerful characters that move through everything and can hit any character they want, which makes it going second fairly challenging. And we are soon to get a Doctor Doom Supreme, which may not even be played, but we're getting effects that globally say you can't generate terrain, which is a huge portion of defensive teams. So we'll see what happens. And I look forward to seeing what the rest of the guys think about this and a couple other things. Hopefully, like I said, we're going to try to get another episode up tomorrow, if not in the next couple of days, before Red, White, and Clicks. Also would like to get their thoughts on that event, as we are only a couple days away from that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Talk to you next time.